once you've got your cover plate off, set your dial gauge up like this. So you've got the pointer, you can see it there, just sitting right along the spline there on the gear. Zero your gauge, and we're going to check for crown wheel and pinion backlash. This is how we check our backlash here. Just grab a hold of it, hold of your crown wheel like that, and just rock it backwards and forwards like so. So it's just showing about 0.2 millimeters. If you're using a metric gauge, you've got between 0.2 and 0.4. If you're using an imperial gauge, it's between 8 and 16 thou. That's what your tolerances are allowed. On the instructions with the diff locker, it is all in imperial, so I made the mistake before of checking it thinking it's all the same, and I freaked myself out thinking, holy crap, I am out of spec by miles. Yeah, anyway, if you do happen to be out of spec with these diffs, you have to adjust it with shims. I'll show you which ones later on, but before you do that, before we go to the next step, make sure you check the backlash in another 3 positions. So you rotate it 90 degrees and check your backlash, and then repeat that another 2 times. So 4 positions, you want to have roughly the same backlash for each of those. Once we've ascertained that our gear is all in spec, we can start pulling this apart. Okay, so you undo these 4 bolts here. Before you do that, just mark them so that you know which side is which when you're putting it back together. I just did it with a little center punch there and there. And so yeah, start pulling this apart, and then we'll see how we go from there, eh? Now that your caps are off, I'm going to show you here, this shim here and this shim here are the ones that you would need to adjust if you've got backlash issues. If your backlash is excessive, too much slop happening there, you put a thicker shim over this side, hence you're pushing the crown wheel further that way, and then you'll have to put a thinner shim to compensate for that. Now to remove all this carrier assembly, I'm going to do it using a pry bar and lifting the whole lot out. It can be quite tricky depending on how long it's been in there and all that sort of stuff. So grab a firm hold of your assembly there and just try and lever it out like so. There we go. It'll be in there really tight. And then grab a hold of it again, there we go, lift it out. This is a good opportunity to have a look at your bearings as well, and make sure they're okay. Be careful when you remove them, because if you damage them you're going to have to replace them. And these ones are still pretty good. I'm going to reuse them. Now, if you have a problem with the shims on the side here, genuine ones are about $220 for a set, so I can understand if you don't want to fork that out just for shims. So I spoke to a guy who works in a diff lapping shop, and he said one thing you can do is if you need to close up the clearance a bit, he said you can pop a shim behind here, and he said but in order to do that you've got to pull that bearing out. So if you're not set up to do that, yeah, that could be a whole lot of other issues there. So anyway, we'll take this all out and then I'll show you the next step. Your next step now is going to be to mark your crown wheel, and this thing here, I'm not sure what that's called, that's slipped my mind now. I don't generally like to use paint because when you're cleaning it off with solvents and whatever, it can wash it away, so I also put a little punch mark there as well. So mark those two and then put this in a vise and start undoing all these. Just another thing that I forgot to mention, especially if you're going to be doing this over a couple of days, just make sure that you, well, what a good idea is to put your bearings and your shims back in over this side, just so you keep them all together, and over the other side as well, and just bolt them in there so that you don't mix them up or lose them, or I don't know, kid eats them, who knows. Anyway, yeah, so put that all back together just loosely, and then put the cover over it and Might save yourself a bit of trouble later on. Okay, once all these bolts are removed, just lift that up there. Crown wheel should just come right out, nice and easy. Set that on the vise. Put this in a safe place, of course. Now, you're going to want to remove this pin right here, because in order to get access to removing this dowel's held in by the pin. Now, it only comes out one way, so you've got to sit that in the vise. Knock the thing out. Should be all the way. A little bit more. There we go. Now, to get these out, you just push that out there. Put that in a safe place. Rotate this like that. Take that gear out. Take the other gear out. Pop this guy out. And pop this one out. Now with these fellas here, these shims are going to be used later on. Once you put the center back in, well, a diff lock in here, you're going to need these shims. 99% of the time the shims are stuffed, so you're going to need to get new ones. You can get them from Genuine for about $10 for a side, so you'll need 2 sets of them, and we'll show you how to put all that in. Now we've come to the fun part, fitting the actual locker. So what we're going to do first, make sure that we've already cleaned everything, of course. These little washers here stick to your housing, and they can be interesting when you're trying to put it together and things start getting stuck. So make sure they're all out, make sure everything's nice and clear. Then you get your locker components. You'll need this shim here, and you'll need this part here. Sit him inside here like that. Make sure it's nice and good. Then get this spacer, and make sure that this side here is facing down, and repeat that with the other side. And then get your cross shaft. Once that's in, and you're going to slide your cross shaft through like this way. Okay, that's all good. Now get your feeler gauges, and you're going to make a measurement between the cross shaft and the spacer. Now this measurement has got to be between 6 and 20 thou, so measure both sides like this. Then you slide your feeler gauge in there like so. That's 10 thou on this side, and 10 thou on the other side. Now you've got a piece of paper that's going to be given to you with your locker kit, and it's got there, if you can see it there, spacer to cross shaft clearance. You're going to write down your measurement on the left side and the right side. You need this for your warranty. If there's going to be a problem, they're going to ask you for that information, so make sure you record it all. Alright, once you've done that, pull that all apart again, and then we'll put the other parts back in. Rightio, now before assembly, we're going to make sure we grease everything up now. So grab your axle gear, let's go, put your shim on there. Okay, then the teeth. Make sure you put plenty in the splines as well. Set that in there like that. Lovely. Then grab your cam spacer gears and grease them up as well. Okay, insert the spacer in there like so, making sure that that recessed part is facing the same side as the teeth. Alright. Insert like so. Now to do the other side, make sure you keep them separate. You won't get them into the housing if you put both of them together like that, so slide that in there first, like that. And that'll just lock into place. And then once we've done that, you're going to fit the springs in here, but first we're going to check the space between these two cam plates. Okay, once you've got your diff locker in there, you want it to be positioned so that this slot is going to be facing you. Now what we're going to be doing is going to be fitting these little pins, there we go, there they are, into this hole right here. Okay, now how you want to have it is so that this little bump here is going to be facing out, and then the spring is going to sit in it like that. Alright, if you can see that, yeah, like that. Alright, what I've done here to make things a bit easier as well is I've jammed some feeler gauges in there just to keep the assembly apart. It's going to make it a lot easier to slide the spring into it. So you want to put that in there like so. Alright, it's going to fit in there. Grab your spring. Wear eye protection too, by the way, because these can like fly out and hit you in the eye, and that's just not fun. Now it's going to go into a little hole there as well. There you go. You're going to hear that little click, and that means it's seated nicely. Okay, hope you were able to see that. Then you just repeat that 3 times. You're going to have to do it in 3 different spots. Alright, now that's all done, we're going to install this cross shaft. Okay. Sometimes a little spacer can slide down and make installation a bit tricky, so make sure that's all well and good and clear. So put that in there. Line up the hole properly. You'll feel that bottom out in there once it's hit all well and good. Okay, and that's installed. Now when I took the pin out, the edges of this hole here, they were a bit sort of bent over a bit, so you might want to do that just to give it a bit of retaining in there so it doesn't fall out. It probably won't fall out, but hey, you never know. Stranger things have happened. Now once that's in there, you get your feeler gauges and you measure this space here. Okay, so I've got mine set there, that's at 155 now. Alright, now it's got to be between 145 and 165. So once you've got that, write it down again on this sheet here that you were given. That's going to be down here into cam clearance. Okay, so you're going to write that in there, and then it's all good. Now we reattach the ring gear back to the carrier here. So once you've cleaned all the bolt holes out and you've cleaned all the bolts as well, you just attach your ring gear to that and make sure that your 2 dots that you put on there before line up properly. So sit that in there, and then just put a little bit of Loctite on your threads there. You're going to need to put just a I'm using Loctite 243. So just put that in there like so, and then you're going to just torque it up to either 88 Newton meters or 65 foot-pounds. That's what it is for my car. So don't really know what everyone else's is. Probably all the same for all the Pajeros, but just have a look first before you do it. And make sure when you put your bolts in, you are tightening them up going across from one another. So from there to there and all the way around. Get your torque wrench. And then just, yeah, repeat that step all the way around. Okay, so now we're going to fit the whole center section back into the diff housing. What you want to do is put some grease on the bearings and on the bearing caps and on these shims, so that when you put it in, they're going to stick to the bearings, and they're not going to fall off when you try and move them around, because that's what's going to happen, and it's pretty annoying with everything falling off there like that. So give the Lokka another once over, just make sure all the springs are sitting properly, and make sure that everything's clean inside the housing, and sit your shims on there. So you want to have a nice bit of glue, nice bit of grease on there, just so that it's like glue, and that'll just stick to everything there and hold it all together. And that'll just drop in nicely. You might need to give it a little bit of encouragement with your encouragement tool. Always use a rubber mallet, don't use a metal one. You might have to use a metal one just on the edges here, just with the shims, just to make sure they're sitting nice and even, because the center of the bearing pokes out and the shim has to go on with it, because once you put this center part in, and then you won't be able to get the shims in because the center part of the bearing will be poking out. So just have that all there like that. A little more encouragement. Shim. Okay, then you get your caps. Remember earlier when we put a mark on them, there it is there, you can just see that. That means it's going on this side. So make sure everything's all cleaned up. And make sure that they're facing the right way too. See how they're rounded like that? Yeah, those rounded edges have to face the outside. So once that's in there and everything's clean and tidy, grab your torque wrench, set it to the recommended torque, which in this case was 65 Newton meters. And that's it. Your diff lock is installed. Now make sure you replace all your seals and put new ones in. And yeah, seal it up, maybe give it a bit of a spray paint, make it look nice. Well, you're not really going to have a look at it while it's under your car. And yeah, whack it back in, and that's it. It's a very simple job, and yeah, nothing really fantastic required. You might want to check your backlash again, just I don't know, just to double check. It's not really important, but yeah. Happy four-wheel driving, guys and girls.